Welcome back to our continuing discussion of JavaScript. Today we'll delve deeper into understanding JavaScript objects. So here I am with a code on the right and the browser on the left, and my page is loaded. I'm going to hit Control-Shift-I and bring up DevTools. In Chrome, the developer tools, you can dock it to the left and dock it to the right, dock it to the bottom, which it currently is, but you can also float it, and I'll do that here. And then use Windows to dock it to the right, being essentially on top of the editor. And now it looks up like a full-up IDE, and you can use it in this mode and the browser on the left to see more detail, and that's the way we'll use it here. So let's hit refresh, and we'll hit our debugger breakpoint here, which is where we're at, and we'll look at the console down here, which is currently clear, and we see right away on line 7 and line 10 the two different ways to create a new object in JavaScript. The first one, let O equal new object, is the familiar object constructor syntax. The next, on line 10, is the object literal syntax, where you just use empty curly braces and that creates a new object. For JavaScript programmers, I think line 10 is probably the most common, and you'll see the reason why immediately on line 13, when you create an object that's not empty, but that actually has properties in it, and there you see the creation of the properties, which are also called key value pairs. So a JavaScript object is an associative container with key value pairs. The key here in this example on line 13, name with a value John and age with a value 30. These properties also have data types. So name is a string and age is a number. Let's continue to run this code, and we'll start to see some activities on the console. We'll see the object now has name and value, and there we see the dot notation to access the property name after it's been created. Now notice on line 19, this is calling out this is using a string as a key. It's not required to enclose it in quotes. It's not required to enclose it in the key name in quotes unless you have a space in it, which we should see on line 20. So there you can create a key. Since it's a string, you can include anything that's in a string, but if it has a space in it, it needs to be in quotes. And now we have the object with the person name and the age. And when you access this this property, you have to use bracket notation because it has a space in the name. You can no longer use the dot notation. So if it's a property that doesn't have a space in it, you can either use the bracket notation or the dot notation, whichever you prefer. But if it has a space in it, you've got to use the bracket notation to access the property. And we can see the property still John, but now called person space name. You can add a new property. It's very simple. All you have to do is call out a property. It doesn't exist yet in the object. We can see that here in the debugger. Oh, wait. Pop up there. We can see that property doesn't exist. And when that line of code runs, now it does. So this prompt, with the other magic power of the bracket notation is it allows you to use a variable for a key for the property name, where the dot notation just requires a fixed property there. It doesn't take it. You can't put a variable name on the other side of the dot, but you can put a variable name inside the brackets. So here I'm going to prompt for the key, which is coming back here, and when I enter that key, I'm going to type in nice, which is our brand new property, and we can see that it will print true, or should print true, out to the console, and there it is. So once again, if you need to use a variable as a key to a property, you have to use the brackets. The other time you have to use the bracket is if you have a space in the property name. Here we delete the property, also dynamically, with the delete keyword. So call out the object and then the property, and that property is no longer found in the object. This is a common pattern in JavaScript programmers to have a function that returns a property. Not returns a property, returns an object. And here we have the object. So we call make user John, and it's a convenient way to construct an object or make an object. This is so common to do this that JavaScript provides a shortcut way to do it. It's a little confusing when you first look at it, but if you just use the name of the variable here the name of the variable is used explicitly as the property name or the key. Here we have it used as the key, but when you just name the key and not the value, it takes the name of the property, or the name of the variable, to be the property name, and it takes the value of the variable to be the value of the property. So a shortcut way to make a object using this object maker pattern, which again is a function that returns an object and that uses its parameters as the initial settings for the object values. So sometimes you want to know whether an object has a property or not. So I have this employee with name and pay. So when I console log is employee undefined, I can test it. It says true here. Yes, it's undefined. It doesn't have one of those. So you can use undefined to test for the existence of a property. However, on line 64 here, I'm adding a property called age and setting it to undefined. Now we know that the employee object has that property. We just added it, but we've set it to undefined, so this test no longer works as a does this property exist test. Instead, we use the new operator in, and that will tell us the truth about whether or not that property exists. So it exists, but it has the state of being undefined. Since an object in JavaScript is really an associative container, and containers can normally be iterated over, and that's true of objects in JavaScript as well. So we use a special loop, the for in loop, to iterate over JavaScript object properties. It returns a key, and then we can use the key against the employee in the using the bracket syntax. Remember, the bracket syntax is required for variables, and key here is a variable scoped within that function, and we can access all the values of the object. So as we said, objects in JavaScript are associative containers. So associative containers normally don't have an order. For example, if you create a Java hash map and you insert several elements, then you iterate over the hash map, that is, loop over the hash map and ask what does the hash map contain? You can do that, but you can't predict the order that the properties and their values will come out in. The associative container in Java, hash map, has no order concept. Let's see if the order, the JavaScript object though has an order concept, and it orders in an interesting way. Properties that aren't numbers are come out in the order that they're added. However, properties that have integer types, a number properties, come out in order, in numerical order. So let's see that. So I'll iterate over this, and we can see as it comes out. Coming out in numerical order, and then the string properties come out in order at the end of the numbers, but in order that they were added. So that's one distinction between a JavaScript object, which is an associative container, and other languages that have associative containers, which again are not predictable in terms of order. They have no order concept. So let's review what we've seen. Objects in JavaScript are associative containers. They store key value pairs. Property keys must be strings or symbols, and they're usually strings. Values can be of any type, though. To access a property, you can use the dot notation, the object.property. You can use square bracket notation, object, and the property in quotes. Square brackets allow you to take the key from a variable, like object variable with a key, but are also required to access properties with spaces. Additional. To delete a property, you can do the delete keyword, object.property, and it will remove the property from the object. To check if a property exists with a given key, you can use is the key in the object. And to iterate over the object, you use the for in loop. Objects in JavaScript are central to the language. JavaScript turns out to be an object-oriented language. So, and we have just begun the discussion. We'll have several lectures on the JavaScript object. Thank you.